Welcome to Miracle Network's Wednesday meditation. I'm so glad we're all here together. If you're on YouTube, please don't forget to click the subscribe button below to receive updates and notifications. Today we're joined by Emily Perry, who will lead us in meditation. Then we have 20 minutes of silence. After that, we're going to open it up for sharing, and we end at 10:45. Over to you, Emily.
Thanks so much, Dan. And it's nice to be with you all once again. Last time I was here, I believe we prayed for peace in the world. And I've been focusing on that because the world is in such a terrible shape these days. But I'm really moved by the idea that the conflict that we see externally begins with the conflict that we have in our own mind. And so that feels like something that we can all take part in, that we can all have an effect. It's sometimes so easy to look at what's happening and feel powerless. Like, what can I do with all that's going on? And if we understand how much power we have in our own mind and the ripple effect of what goes out from our mind, then we wouldn't feel so powerless at all. And so I think last time, if I'm not mistaken, I talked about lesson 109 in the workbook, which is my all-time favorite. I rest in God. And using that lesson to get in touch with what it calls a quietness unshaken by the world's appearances. And this quietness comes from the thought and it comes from the practice of resting in God. And the lesson even says the very idea of resting in God, the very idea of I rest in God has the power to wake the sleeping truth in you. And what that means is that it has the power to wake vision in you. And vision, from a Course perspective, is seeing through the appearances to the eternal holiness of all things. And so the bottom line here is that when we can rest in God, then we can move completely undismayed through all of the storms and the strifes of this world. We can move past the misery, we can move past the pain, we can move past loss and death, all concerns, all burdens, all anxiety. And when we can do that, we bring the peace of God into our own mind, and we can bring that rest into the world. And boy, it's such a beautiful idea to think that we have that power within us, because so often when we are facing something that's very difficult, the truth just bounces off, doesn't it? So someone has really hurt us. And we think, yeah, I know I'm supposed to be loving in this situation, but you have no idea what they just done. And what these lessons remind us is that there's nothing, there's nothing that can shake that peace that we have access to. And so what it means is we don't have to refuse to engage with the world, which is naive. We don't have to buy into it too much either. We can transcend all that can make us negative and can make us angry here. We can transcend all of those misperceptions of us. We can transcend all the things that have been done to us by understanding that there's a power in this world far greater than what our eyes tell us is true. And so what I'd like to do before we get into the meditation is to get you in touch a bit with what blocks us from really understanding how much we can rest in God. What is blocking us from that rest and that peace? And obviously, what's blocking us is our ego. And so the idea of resting in God, that God has no ego, therefore we can always rest in him, is an interesting thought when we apply it to ourselves. Are we someone in whom others can rest? And what that means is we can rest in God because we know he's always safe. Are we always safe for others to rest in us? Or are they afraid to rest in us because they can't? And the reason why they can't is because they're afraid of our judgment. They're afraid of our condemnation. Are you someone around whom others must tread lightly? Really interesting question to ask ourselves. Lesson 198 in the workbook is only my condemnation injures me. And in this lesson, we become aware that it's our condemnation that blocks our vision and makes us prisoner to the ego. And naturally, because this is a Course in Miracles, it's our forgiveness that sets us free. And so just being aware of how much we go through the day condemning things, condemning people, condemning situations for not being what we think they should be, all of that blocks our access to resting in God. All of it blocks our access to God's peace. All of that creates conflict in our mind. And when we have conflict in our mind, others can't rest in us. So I'd like to read you a couple sentences from lesson 108 lesson 198 that illustrate this point. Under paragraph 4 of that lesson, it says, forgiveness is the only road that leads out of disaster, past all suffering, and finally away from death. How could there be another way when this one is the plan of God himself? And that's really interesting. If you really focus on that sentence, forgiveness is the only road that leads out of disaster. This one is the plan of God himself. So forgiveness is the plan of God to get us out of the suffering and the suffering in our mind and the disasters of our world. And so it says, why should you oppose it? Why should you quarrel with it? Why should you seek 1,000 ways in which it must be wrong and 1,000 other possibilities? And what an incredible idea. God has chosen forgiveness as our way out of suffering. And yet, what we do to perpetuate that suffering in our mind is quarrel with his plan, fight with it, offer 1,000 ways in which it has to be wrong, and offer God 1,000 other possibilities. How senseless is it to argue with God about his plan? You know? And so, what we're here to do is to accept that plan. We're here to accept forgiveness as the plan of God. And that means releasing other people from the errors that they've made. We want to be released from the errors that we've made in our life. We need to release others from the errors that they've made in their life. And I'm using the word error intentionally because that's the language that the Course uses. The Course says there's no error that someone else has made that can ever rise to the level of sin. We love to say, I can forgive this, but I can't forgive that. I can accept this, but I can't accept that. And the more we do that, the more conflict we create in our own mind, and the more conflict we create in our world. So if forgiveness is the plan of God, then we can rest assured that it's the only plan that will work. And why fight with a plan that will work? Especially with all of our substitutes that just don't work. And you know why we know all of our substitutes for God's plan don't work? Because we're still in so much conflict in our mind. That's why we know the plans don't work. Because our minds are not in this state of peace. We're not really resting in God. And so before we get into the meditation, I think some of you may know, because I love this quote. I've read it quite a few times when I've done these meditations with you. But there's a section in the course called The Quiet Answer, or at least the CE edition of the course called The Quiet Answer. And in The Quiet Answer, it says, in your state of mind, and what it means by that is in your state of conflict, solution is impossible. Therefore, God must have given you a way to reach another state of mind in which the answer is already there. Think about how incredible that would be to really understand that the answer is actually already there It's done. Whatever it is that's causing you so much suffering, the answer is it's already solved. It's already healed. Such is the holy instant. It is there that all your problems should be brought and left. Here they belong, for here their answer is. What is a holy instant? It's that out of time interval where we drop the illusions of this world and accept that God's will is done, that only love is real, and that healing is certain. Healing has already occurred. So the section says this is a reminder that we have the ability to step out of our everyday conflicts. We have the ability to step out of the battleground of our world and step into that quiet answer. Step into that place outside of time, outside of illusion, where all of our problems are already solved because God's will is already done. And so that's what we're going to do in our meditation today. So if you would, let's close our eyes. Let's all take a deep breath together. As always, grateful for this time that we've set aside in furtherance of our spiritual journey, furtherance of right-mindedness, in furtherance of healing, in furtherance of releasing that conflict in our mind, because as that conflict is released, we become capable of being miracle workers in the world, true expressions of divine love, God's ambassadors who share his love with others in this world that desperately needs it. But we're only going to be those miracle workers if we clear the conflict in our own mind and rest in God. And so as we begin, think of a specific concern that you have, a struggle that you're facing in your life, a person with whom you are arguing, quarreling, feel hurt by, betrayed by, in deep conflict with. And make a decision to let the situation, let the person go into God's hands. And take a moment and say to God directly, I trust you to take care of this need as you see fit. Say with all the sincerity that you can muster, I ask before all else that your will of love be done. In having surrendered this person, this situation into God's hands, really try to truly let it go. Really try to step aside from all that conflict in your mind and enter into what the Course calls a quiet time of listening and loving. Having placed all of your concerns, all of your needs into God's hands, place yourself in his hands as well. Have a sense of offering yourself up to divine love. Give yourself up to, as the Song of Prayer says, to be at one with love. Your needs are not the most important thing in this situation. Love is. Remembering also, as the Song of Prayer says, that there's no need to ask God for anything. There's no need to implore him, to beseech him for anything. You are fully entitled to everything love has to offer. It's already yours. So now you can rest. You can rest in perfect oneness. That is love itself. And maintain this rest whenever your mind wanders, whenever you feel that sense of conflict. Surrender yourself once again into God's hands. Place the future in the hands of God. Surrender to that love. Know that whatever needs you have are second to God's will, and God's will is always healing. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to meditate quietly on this idea. If you find that your mind wanders, understand that the quiet answer is always available to you, and that you're fully entitled to everything love has to offer.
Open your eyes and come back into the room. We have 7 minutes left for sharing. If you'd like to share, raise your hand and I'll invite you to take yourself off mute. Who'd like to share? Teresa, take yourself off mute.
I'm looking for you, Emily. Where are you? Oh, there you are. Oh, Emily, thank you so much. That was really lovely. I haven't thought about whether anybody could ever rest in me, so it was a really good question. And I thought, what is it? Because nobody came to mind straight away that I had a big issue with.
Lucky
Not,
you.
yeah, I know. And so I thought, well, what other conflict have I got in my mind? And I know what other conflict I have in my mind. So it was quite lovely to go through all the different papers. Oh, there's this pile of paper I need to deal with, and there's that I need to deal with, and it's all in the world, and it's all distracting me from, my distraction will probably not have people being able to rest in me because my mind is too busy. I'm not present. And I thought, wow, this is so, it was very good. And thank you so much. Everything you said
Mm.
was very helpful. Thank you.
I've had those same thoughts in relation to my children. I have two teenage boys, and I am trying to parse out, do they not tell me? It's the classic, like, how's your day? Fine. Anything interesting? No, like that kind of stuff. And I'm like, why is it that they're not fully engaging with these questions the way that I would like them to? And I've had to think, is it because I'm actually on my computer when I ask them? Am I sending a message of, I'm busy, but I want to know, like it's that, mixed message thing. And I think we do that so often, more than we realize, more than we realize. And I'm glad that you were struck by the question of, can someone rest in me? Because that's been a game changer for my own thoughts on these ideas. There's a line that's new to the CE that was cut in the foundation edition, but it's so beautiful. And it says, Jesus says to Helen, love him steadily. He's talking about Bill. And Jesus is talking about Bill, telling Helen to love him steadily, no matter what he says, no matter what he does. And if you find this to be difficult, I'm paraphrasing, if you find this to be difficult, remember that's what you ask of me. Really powerful. Really, really powerful.
Who would like to share? I'll jump in here. Emily, that was beautiful. Thank you. I got so much out of it. Um, and an issue that's come up for me, it wasn't about a person, it was a condition. And um, I had a blood test and my cholesterol was high, and my doctor told me to take statins. And I did some research into that, and so many people said, "Don't take statins. Don't take statins. Do it naturally." So I didn't take statins, and I've been doing it naturally. And um, but I don't know what's happening. I don't know if it's working or not. And so I have some fear around that, and I just quieted my mind, and I just gave it to Holy Spirit, and I said, how would you have me see this? And what came was, all is well. Relax. You're doing the right thing. So
Mm,
I felt so calm after that. It was a good exercise.
mm. That's great to hear. That's great to hear. There's a line in the Course that says that these bodies are nothing more than a shadow circling around the good. And I think that's so powerful also to keep in mind that these bodies are shadows of the goodness. That's the ultimate reality of who we are. Bodies come and go, cholesterol is up and down. And at the end of the day, that quiet answer remains, right? The only thing real is who you are as God created you.
Yeah. Who'd like to share? Jim, take yourself off mute.
Yes, thank you, Dan, and thank you, Emily, very much. That was a wonderful question, and always a wonderful question to keep in mind. Somebody came to my mind about who I find it difficult to rest in. I immediately thought of somebody else who I found it difficult to rest in. And of course, I had to bring it back to myself and say, well, why is it that I can't rest with this person? Because there's obviously something going on in both of us. If I can't rest with somebody else, they're not going to be able to rest with me. So it all comes back to ourselves, and I need to look at why it is that I'm not fully at rest when I'm with this person, and see how that works for her. But it was, I think it's a very good question. So thank you very much for putting it to us, Emily.
There's a line in I think it's the Song of Prayer that says something like, "Can you forgive and condemn at the same time?" And I should know the Course line better than I know the Martin Luther King line, but the King said the same thing of, you have no moral authority with someone who can feel your underlying contempt. And I that's another thing I think about a lot, that we think I'm being loving, I'm forgiving. But if we're not all the way there, the other person can feel it. We don't have to say it. They just feel it when we walk into the room. And if they feel it, then we become unsafe to rest in. And what can we do to fully root it out so that we become safe? And I believe that as we become safer, they become safer.
Okay, we've come to the end of our time together. Take yourself off mute and show your appreciation to Emily. Thank you, Emily. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank
Happy
you.
New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Terima kasih. Thank you.